60 grand and change buys you this, the new Ford Ranger XLT with the V6 engine. Of course, that's what everybody wants in the new T6.2 Ford Ranger. I've already reviewed the Ranger Sport with the 2-litre bi-turbo 4-cylinder on the Chasing Cars channel, and I thought it was pretty good. But after driving the XLT for a week with the 3-litre, it's obvious to me that this is the one that I would want. And I would actually want it just like this if I wasn't going to splurge on a wild track or on a Raptor, because as we'll find out in today's video, the XLT is actually a pretty nice spec, and it's a good way to buy a Ranger without this thing breaking the bank. We'll also have a look under the bonnet, we'll take this thing for a drive and see what the V6 diesel is really like and why I think it's worth spending another 3 grand on. But just like any vehicle, the new Ranger isn't perfect. I'll also point out a few foibles with the ute. I'll let you know my honest opinion, and you can let me know yours down below in the comments. Here's what everyone's talking about. It's the Ford PSA Lion 3-litre turbo diesel V6 engine. This engine's been around a long time. It's not brand new. It is tried and tested. A lot of its foibles have been worked out over the years, and it's the new heart of the Ford Ranger. You can still get the 2-litre engine with either a single turbo or a twin turbo setup. This is the desirable one, 184 kilowatts of power and 600 Newton meters of torque. The word on the street is that Volkswagen were the ones who insisted on the V6 diesel because, of course, the underpinnings of the T6.2 Ranger are going to be shared with the incoming Mark II Volkswagen Amarok, which everyone knows for its V6 from Volkswagen. This is a different engine to that one, but as we'll see when we take the Ranger out on the road, that's really nothing to worry about, because in some ways this engine is actually better than the 3-litre V6 that exists in the outgoing Amarok. So stay tuned to find out why that is. XLT sits in around the middle of the new Ranger lineup, as it kind of always has in this vehicle, and as such the interior feels kind of mid-range. You get a lot of cool new stuff that are like hallmarks of the T6.2 Ranger, including big new digital screens which feel really modern and best in segment for these sort of light pickups or dual cab utes here in Australia. But in other areas, you know that you're not in a top of the range car, including with these fabric seats. Thankfully though, the fabric feels quite nice and soft. The seats themselves are supportive. They've got a good range of manual adjustment, and the driving position is a good, comfortable, supported one. So you actually don't need to go to the Sport with its electric seats to feel comfy. This will do just fine. And I actually think the XLT makes a good case for itself. It's got even chunkier rubber than the Sport. It's still comfy, it's still techie. So for me, I'd either buy an XLT like this or an optioned up wild track with premium audio and matrix LED headlights and whatnot. But here in the XLT, we've got a 10-inch vertical touchscreen, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, Ford Sync system, that all works well, and another digital screen in front of us. You can't put a map there, but this is still way ahead of virtually any other ute. It looks cool. It's got cool startup graphics and that stuff. I'm a bit juvenile. I like that kind of thing. Nice little visual design in the air vents, lots of storage, no wireless charging, but they leave the pad. That's a bit cheap. Big cup holders, storage between the seats, big door bins, and one design detail I really like, the opening mechanism for the doors, I don't have my words today, is actually in the grab itself. It feels weird at first, but once you get used to it, you find yourself doing it on every car. At least I do. Here we are in the back of the Ranger XLT, and it's bigger than the old vehicle. Ford have kind of heavily modified the old Ranger chassis for the new T6.2 platform. They've changed a lot. The overall dimensions are similar, but they have stretched the amount of cabin space. And as such, legroom behind myself at 6 foot is good, headroom's good, shoulder room's good. One note is though, if you're often carrying grubby kids or friends or apprentices in the back here, you might actually want the Sport with its leather seat coverings, which will be easier to clean. But if you're pretty tidy, this fabric is gonna do okay. You do get air vents, you get a 12-volt socket, you get a flip down armrest here. God, I struggle with this on like every Ranger. Oh, I see. Okay, no, I'm the problem. We do have cup holders though there. That's all good. Isofix, map pockets, it's all fairly complete. Buyers that want maximum cred for buying a Ranger with a V6 are gonna feel a little bit left out, because here on the tailgate, it says 4-wheel drive, but the only V6 badges on the vehicle are on the front flank. So you've got to be up alongside it to kind of know that this is the one with the daddy engine. Is that even accurate? The Raptor would probably be the one with the daddy engine, and that hasn't actually landed yet, but I'll be driving it soon. Either way though, open up the new stamped tailgate. This is an optional spray-in bed liner. You can fit a Euro pallet in there if that's your thing. Another element Volkswagen insisted they had to have in this platform. There's power in the bed, there's tie-down points, and even the XLT gets this nice, handsome sports bar too. The running costs are going to shock you because the diesel V6 doesn't really use any more fuel than the bi-turbo 2-litre, at least in my testing experience. What I tend to do is drive the cars as if they're my own for a week. So I commute to and from the Chasing Cars office. I do a bit of a country road trip on the weekend, see family, drive friends around, all that sort of thing. And you know what? The diesel V6 and the 4-cylinder used exactly the same amount of fuel, about 11 litres per 100 Ks in the real world. The 2 litres a little bit more economical on the highway, but again, there's not much in it, so you can go for more power without feeling like your running costs are going to be that much higher. Warranty on the Ranger, that's 5 years of unlimited kilometres. Servicing, Ford only caps it for the first 4 services, which happen every 15,000 kilometres, and those first 4 cost $399 a piece. And lastly, insurance. In the last 12 months, the median budget direct customer paid $1,144 to comprehensively insure a new Ford Ranger. But everyone's situation varies and your premium will vary based on things insurers take into account, like where you live, how you park the car, and your driving history. So what's the Ranger XLT V6 like to drive, and why do I dig this spec so much? Well, for me, I think it's the combination of the premium engine, which is optional on this spec of Ranger, with the slightly more honest presentation of the XLT compared to some of the up-spec variants. The Sport and the Wild Track and undoubtedly the forthcoming Raptor are all really nice, but the XLT has, I don't know, there's something cool about its slightly harder wearing interior, but the fact it still gets all the tech that you'd really want in a car like this. So for me, it'd be an XLT V6 or the fully optioned Wild Track with the nice audio and things like that. But here in the XLT, this is the cheapest way you can get into the diesel V6 Ranger. So it's a updated version of the PSA Ford Lion V6 engine, 3 litres in displacement, single turbo, and here it produces 184 kilowatts of power and 600 Newton meters of torque. So a little bit less power than in some other applications of this engine. In the F-150, when it was available in the US with this 3-litre diesel, it made about 190 kilowatts of power. But you're not really going to miss those 6 kilowatts because this engine feels really strong and it just makes the Ranger absolutely effortless. The bi-turbo 2-litre 4-cylinder is already a very decent engine in terms of the dual cab pickup ute segment here in Australia. You know, it makes 154 kilowatts of power and 500 Newton meters of torque, so not really modest. But the 3-litre V6 just ups the level of serenity and sophistication in this vehicle, and I think that's exactly what you'd spend your $3,000 on. Well, that and the upgraded four-wheel drive system, because the 2-litre motors still have the typical four-wheel drive system where it runs in 2 high, meaning rear-wheel drive on the road, and so if you're accelerating while cornering, you can still get a bit of wheel slip happening at the back, and especially on a greasy road, it just becomes a little bit, I guess, off-putting at times when you're feeling the car sliding around at the back. The Ranger is certainly not as bad as some in that regard, but the V6 just eliminates that problem because it lets you run the vehicle in 4 auto mode, which for all intents and purposes is just high range 4-wheel drive for the road. Now, of course, the outgoing Amarok has had this feature for ages. The Triton has had the feature for ages. The Amarok famously didn't also have low range, whereas the Triton did. And here in the Ranger, you do still have selectable low range in addition to the 4 auto modes. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds in that regard. And it works really, really well. It allows the Ranger V6 to make a clean getaway on the road. So you don't have wheel spin when you're launching the vehicle, and in fact we performance tested the ute and it will do 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 7.7 seconds, which compares to about 8.5 seconds for the 2-litre. So you can see the performance isn't worlds apart, but how it makes the power is quite different because the diesel V6 is quieter, it's more refined, and when you are up it for the rent, it sounds better as well. It doesn't sound quite as strained. It has quite a nice, deep, bassy note to it. Diesel 6 cylinders are way more refined sounding than 4 cylinders, and there's less vibration and harshness as well. So I think it's a really easy $3,000 to shell out. It's a faster car, it's a quieter car, it's a more sophisticated and smooth car as a result. And I say car, knowing that this thing is a ute, but it's about as refined as a dual cab ute has ever gotten. And I said this in my Sport 2-litre review. Once you take out sort of the Rams and the Silverados and the forthcoming F-150, all of which are more car-like, like they're enormous, but they're more car-like in terms of the way that they're set up. Among dual cab utes, there's a significant transition underway from these vehicles being extremely agricultural to being more premium, and the Ranger is sort of the vehicle that has pushed the game the furthest at the moment. It's much better to drive than your typical dual cab ute. It's better to drive than the old Ranger. The steering in particular has been improved considerably, making it more like an SUV steering rack. So it's lighter, it's got more feel coming through it. Just makes it an easier vehicle to kind of punt around, to be honest, which is what a lot of people do with these things on tarmac rather than paddock bashing. The ride too is more settled, especially when unladen. There are still some giveaways that you're dealing with a frame vehicle and not something unibody. There's a slight jitter at all times, but again, it's less than the old Ranger and significantly less than a typical dual cab ute, something like a Triton, a D-Max, a BT50, even the outgoing Amarok, which has been pretty great in this regard. As for the safety tech, it's decent. We've got adaptive cruise control. It works pretty well. The lane keep assist is a little rudimentary. It's not up to the same standard as kind of common family SUVs, in that it won't glue you to the center of the lane, but it will attempt to stop you from driving out of it if the feature is switched on. We've also got blind spot monitoring as well, and you can option up a package with a 360-degree camera, which makes this 5.3 meter long ute something of a doddle to park, which is certainly a nice feature. Also important is the comparison to the outgoing Amarok's V6 engine. More of an issue for the Volkswagen than the Ford version of this ute, but obviously there's a comparison to be drawn between V6s. And you know what? I actually think the Ford unit is slightly better, which will be good news for people that have been wringing their hands about the departure of the Amarok V6. The Volkswagen motor is really strong, it's tried and tested, and that's all good, but it is a very laggy motor. You get into the pedal and you can wait a second or two for the vehicle to surge. You don't have anywhere near as much lag in the Ford engine. It feels just as strong, it's putting up good numbers, just like the outgoing Amarok, but it's actually a more drivable motor. Like all of our videos, this isn't hashtag sponsored content. Ford have just done a good job on the Ranger, and they needed to, because more Australians than ever are buying vehicles like this to be their family car, not just their rough and ready work vehicle. And as such, it needs to handle well, it needs to drive well, it needs to be refined, and in virtually every discipline apart from wet braking, which has been a little bit weak in our testing compared to a similarly sized SUV, the new Ranger is very impressive. And for me at least, the best specs are the XLT V6, this car, and an optioned up Wildtrak V6, at least until the Raptor arrives, and that'll probably have me giggling and doing silly things on video, but you can subscribe to see that later. So do that down there, hit the notification bell, leave us a comment, and as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.